Hello everyone and welcome to week 11. I'm just checking back in with you guys. So here I am under our course content under week 11. The first 10 weeks we've been reading and completing our various responses in discussion board, as well as taking quizzes to have you further your conversations regarding the readings and topics that we've discussed in class. So now this week we are going to talk about your final projects, which should be worked on together jointly as they do feed off of one another. So as you know, this week you should be submitting your final draft of your TV/movie review. Of course, you are viewing this lecture. And we will also be going over your presentation and final projects directions. Also, I'd like to remind you that part of the course requirements is that you complete 15 journal entries. They are worth 150 points, and I see a number of you have only completed roughly half of them. So you might also want to take some time in the upcoming weeks to complete that portion of the course as well. I have created a link here at the bottom to the actual journal page. So again, don't forget to post those. Okay, so let's first go over your presentation directions. Okay, so your presentations are worth 50 points and the final portion is due on the 2nd of December. This is in preparation for your final assignment. You're going to be presenting research findings to the class in a 7 to 10 minute presentation, but it must not exceed 10 minutes. You may use PowerPoint or any other presentation method of your choosing. I use Camtasia. You can use Camtasia. You can get a free 30-day trial, that is, without having to pay for it, if you would prefer to use this sort of method. But you can also explore other means. Now, it's very important that you understand that you must use a webcam, i.e. we must be able to see you in the presentation, and of course you must have a recorded presentation using either an external microphone or the microphone already built into your PC or Mac. Projects will be deducted 10 points if a microphone or webcam isn't used, so you're going to have to play around with this if you're unfamiliar with it. Again, this is an online class, so you should be somewhat familiar with this technology. Now, your presentation, as I said, is going to be basically digging up materials for your speech, which will have to do with your final project that I'll be discussing in just a moment. You're going to want to ask yourself what you want and what your goal is with regards to your audience. Do you want to change their mood, their mind, or their willingness to act on something? What kind of rhetoric will you need to achieve your goals? You want to avoid using blame, like he or she is to blame for this present situation. And you're also going to want to avoid using values-based language, such as right versus wrong. Rather, you're going to want to think about offering your audiences choices. So instead of saying something like, this is the right course, or this is wrong, I will argue this or that, you'll want to frame your argument in terms of what is the best for as many people as possible. You want to make sure that you're using language that your audience is familiar with. After you decide what you want from your audience, you're going to need to nail down the issue itself. Is it simple or complex? If it's complex, you need to break it down into digestible parts or smaller issues. You'll also want to consider what a potential opponent might say about your issue and spend some time framing your argument in response to this. Next, you're going to want to consider what your audience values. What are some of the commonplaces we shared as a class over the semester? How can you mirror those commonplaces through code words or tribal talk, that is, language again, that your audience is familiar with, to effectively persuade them? Is the central issue about values or rights or something else? After you've constructed your basic argument, you will need to arrange it into a cohesive presentation. When presenting your argument, remember to move from establishing your character to establishing the facts to establishing an emotional connection. Ethos is reserved for your introduction. How can you get your audience to like you? Do you share their values? Do you exhibit good sense? And do you show disinterest? In other words, make them identify with you. The logos is the meat of your argument. This is where your actual research is going to come in. Do you have the facts and figures to back up your claim? Here you can use narration. Tell a bit of the history of the matter and use those facts and figures. Remember to keep it succinct and relevant to the immediate argument. Tangential information distracts from rather than adds to your goal. Prove your point logically and smack down your opponent's argument. And finally, pathos or emotion comes at the end, and it asks you to consider what your goal is. Do you want to change your audience's mind? Do you want to charge them up through anger, fear, pity, patriotism, or some other emotion? Your speech should follow this classical model based on Cicero's 5 canons of persuasion. You will first have an introduction to get the audience on your side. Then your narration will state the facts. The division portion is where you will list where you and your opponents agree and disagree on a particular topic. And the proof is where your actual argument and evidence will go. So, for example, after considering all these various points of view, you think that it is best that we follow X, Y, or Z course of action. Then you will be destroying your opponent's arguments through the refutation, and in conclusion, you'll state your most important points of your argument and rouse your audience emotions. You should use proper language, clarity, vividness, decorum, and ornament in your presentation. Proper language refers to the words that suit the issue and the audience best. Clarity refers to boiling your argument down to its essential point in a manner that your audience can understand. Vividness allows you to create a rhetorical reality by telling a story with facts and figures. Decorum is the skillful art of fitting in. You'll want to know your audience and what language and topics suit them, and which ones don't. Ornament has to do with the rhyme and pitch of your voice. Speak softly when you want to lure your audience in, and speak with a crescendo when you are building one thing on top of another to reach a climax. Now, your presentations will require you to incorporate images into them. So you're going to want to think about what images you associate with your particular concepts, ideals, commonplaces, or figures of speech. And you'll want to refer to those in your presentation. And finally, delivery asks you to make sure that you present yourself and your materials in a confident manner to the class. Remember, you are the expert, and you want to persuade the class to adopt your reasoning and take action. Your presentation should be 7 to 10 minutes long, but must not exceed 10 minutes. As I mentioned, your presentations should include images and also have minimal text. That is, if you have entire screens full of information, then what would be the point for you to be presenting in the first place? We could just read it. You may use notes, of course, to guide your presentation. However, you should not read directly from them. All presentations are due on 11/24 to the forum on Blackboard. And again, you must respond to all the presentations to receive the 25 peer critique points. Part of the peer critique will ask you to pay close attention to each presentation in your group and write one thing down you liked about the presentation and one thing you think needs more clarification. This will help each of you in constructing your final projects. So let's take a look at the final project directions. Your final project is not there. Haha. Here it is. Here we go. Your final project is called an annotated bibliography project. The peer review will be on 11/24, and the final project will be due December 17th. The annotated bibliography project allows you to come up with a foundation for a research agenda if you were to be writing a polished paper. Again, this is not a polished research paper in and of itself. This is rather the research and background information that you construct and conduct if you were to be writing a final research project. The project will include a 2 to 3 page introduction, which will provide a brief history or background of your topic. It is important to note that this history should not be since the beginning of time, but rather something more recent. Your annotated bibliography will include 10 scholarly sources that you have consulted, properly formatted in MLA. Each of these sources must offer a different point of view on your topic. You do not want to stack your rhetorical deck by having 10 sources that basically say all the same thing. Your project will also include a paragraph, which is 5 to 7 sentences, for each scholarly source that briefly summarizes the source and tells how it is useful to your project. Remember to incorporate any quotations that you find relevant in the resources. And don't forget to use the they say, I say templates when and where appropriate. There are a few topics that have been done to death and I simply don't want to see students write about. This includes abortion, the death penalty, gun control, euthanasia, or the legalization of any sort of drug. Not only have they been done to death, but they're also pretty uninteresting at this point. Not to mention they're hardly the stuff of deliberative argument. People usually devolve into fights about these particular issues because they are so laden with particular values and beliefs. Any project that focuses on any of these issues will automatically fail. No exceptions. Period. No, really, please don't write about them. You'll want to consult the OWL at Purdue for formatting questions. Books and journal articles of a scholarly nature only should be included in this project. The only websites you can use for your final presentations and papers must be accessed through the library's databases. Bibliographies will be deducted 10 points for every non-scholarly source that you use. And you will automatically fail the project if there is any use or reference to Wikipedia. So you want to avoid that at all costs. Now, what constitutes scholarly books or journal articles? Again, anything that you find in the reference section of a library or the library's website are good for getting a handle on how your topic is being discussed. However, this is general information, and it does not have scholarly analysis or discussion. So again, encyclopedias, dictionaries, popular newspapers and magazines, such as the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, or Time magazine. Those again are popular sources written in a general language so that the most people can understand them. You want works that are specific to the scholarly field your topic comes under. And again, make sure that you are indeed formatting your papers correctly in MLA and that you are using a scholarly source. If you have any questions as to whether your source is scholarly or not, please feel free to email me and ask. I'm happy to help you with that. And again, all your resources must be at least 10 pages. Okay, so you're probably wondering, well, what the heck is this supposed to look like? So I have included here an example of a successful project done in the past. Now, keep in mind that this one only has 5 annotations. Your final project will have to have 10. This is just what it should look like and basically how it should be worded. Of course, you all have your own voice and style, but a lot of people like to look at templates. So you'll see here that it is basically constructed in MLA, which is what we've been working with. And here we have an introduction that is 2 to 3 pages. Actually, I believe this one's a little bit more than 3 pages. You can read this more specifically on your own. I just want to take you through what it should look like. So that's your introduction. And then here's where the annotations come in. It should start on its own separate page and be labeled Works Cited because that's how it is in MLA. Your entries should all be alphabetically listed by the last name of the first author on your particular source. And again, make sure that you're consulting the MLA at Purdue for how to properly format each form of scholarly source. And again, see here that the student has done this and does indeed incorporate various statistical information, quotations that she found relevant in each of these sources. So again, I realize that this does not have 10 sources altogether, but this is just an example of how it should look. So this is what we're going to be working on for the next 4 weeks in our class. Again, make sure that you set out a diligent research agenda. And of course, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to email me or post to the discussion board forum. And don't forget to do your journal entries. Have a great week.